Hey everyone, it's Tim here again, and you're listening to episode 16 of the Black Swan Podcast. If it's your first time listening, thanks for tuning in, and feel free to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It's actually been a minute since our last episode. Like many small businesses around the world, we've been navigating a return to manufacturing after restrictions began to get lifted in our state here in Michigan. And we've also been processing the social unrest and demand for reform around the country the last several weeks. So please stay tuned as we begin having conversations with our artists and friends, beginning to try to unpack some responsibility as a company and individuals, continuing to support equity in our little orchestral percussion community. In the meantime, we're super excited to be back manufacturing, shipping, and promoting Black Swamp products. So this conversation with Cory Hills was actually recorded several months ago after Cory returned from an event in New Zealand with the Los Angeles Percussion Quartet. If you follow Cory online, hopefully you caught one or more of his weekly live percussive storytelling performances in April, May, and a little bit of June. If not, you can always visit Cory's website and YouTube channel to catch up on his content. I'll throw some links in our show notes you can check out. Cory has a really unique and diverse career, and we take time to dig into the development of his percussive storytelling project, his collaboration with the Los Angeles Percussion Quartet, and many tidbits in between. So here we go. So you're comfortable being recorded then?
Yeah. I just hit record too. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're rolling. If we're both recording, we're good to go. Hey, Cory.
I am rolling. Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good.
I appreciate you calling in and having a chat with us for the Black Swan Podcast. Really just, I'm having a good time talking to a lot of our artists and educators and getting their backstory, like, you know, how they got started in the music industry, kind of what their education was, what they've been doing. So I'm like excited to talk to you because I think you have a really unique and interesting story.
I've heard that a lot about me, and I think that my parents say that too. You know, they're like, he's a very unique individual.
Well, that's not a negative thing. That's totally cool. Like, I mean, we'll get into all this stuff, but obviously, like the solo things you do with percussive storytelling, and then, you know, obviously your work with the Los Angeles Percussion Quartet, and I know you studied outside the U.S., so we'll talk about some of that stuff. Which, by the way, you guys just got back from New Zealand somewhat recently. Is that correct?
Yeah, September we had about a 3-week, 3-week tour through Christchurch, Wellington, and Auckland, 3 of the big cities there.
Right.
We did our rep, and then we also premiered a concerto for percussion quartet and orchestra in Christchurch.
What was that piece?
It's called Gyre. It was by a New Zealand composer named James Gardner, and it was really interesting because he decided not to use any pitched percussion for us. And so there were a ton of found objects, everything from regular drums, cymbals, all in block-in, but then I had a pile of plastic toys and debris found in the ocean.
Right.
So the piece was about this trash island in the Pacific Ocean called Gyre, which is the name of the piece. And so I got to improvise on all kinds of weird things, including a pink dolphin that made the newspaper review, because I squeaked this dolphin at one point. And I'm supposed to squeak the dolphin with the gusto of Greta Thunberg, you know, the environmental activist.
Yeah, for sure.
The teenage girl. Yeah, so she's referenced, and so I'm supposed to like channel her passion when I squeak the dolphin.
Yeah, there is a lot of passion there, and so did that. You literally had to go to the beach and find your own instruments, I guess.
Yes, indeed. I found some, and then the only unfortunate roadblock that I ran into there was that they actually have clean beaches.
Right.
So it was it was disappointing, but also kind of cool that they didn't have trash.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, I needed it, but on the other, I'm like, wow, you guys do a really good job keeping your beaches clean.
Right. I guess you could have for a couple days just been really messy on the beach, or planted some deliberate items that you wanted to use, and then go up after the fact, and pick them up and use them. But it defeats the purpose.
This is true. Well, I must say the pink dolphin did come from the dollar store. So,
okay. Was it near the beach?
We did. It was, yeah. Everything's near the beach there, so that's it kind of works itself out.
Okay, well, we got way ahead of ourselves there for a second. So let's go back in time. Like, where are you from? Like, where'd you grow up?
I'm from Northern Virginia, outside D.C.
And kind of a typical musician start. I mean, this is something I ask a lot of the people I interview. Like, you got started in middle school, or how did your interest in percussion develop?
Yeah, I started piano, I think in 2nd or 3rd grade.
Yeah.
I just asked my parents if I could play. And then in middle school, I wanted to play an instrument. And so I randomly picked up drums. I'm not even sure how. Partly is I had asthma, and so I didn't want to play an instrument. I had to blow.
Sure.
Because, although it's a misnomer, but at the time, I didn't want to. And drums just seemed, I don't know, and mallets, drums, but all of percussion. I wasn't like wanting to be a rock drummer. I just wanted to play percussion. And so I think I started when I was 13 or so, 13, 14. And then boom came drumline, and there she goes.
It was all downhill, or maybe uphill from there. Like, so
I think it goes uphill for a bit, and then it goes downhill, but then there's a bridge you can take if you don't want to go downhill.
Right.
I took the bridge.
So what bridge was that?
Just into the other world of percussion. I didn't stay in that land.
Sure.
Which can be fun, but drumline was cool, and it certainly opened up a lot of doors of possibility.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what happened, is I used that to get to the next place, to the next place, to the next place, and to learn about the wider world of music and how percussion can be applied. And that was sort of my take on things when I went to college.
Yeah, in college, to start with, was Northwestern, I think. Is that correct?
Northwestern with Michael Burritt. I think people may have heard of him.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Back when he was at Northwestern. So, so how did you end up there from Virginia?
Well, I didn't really know much about places. My family doesn't have any musical connections, and my teachers were very they were not pushy. They didn't have an agenda of what school that I should apply to. It came down to Eastman with John Beck at the time, and Northwestern with Burritt. And I found out about Northwestern because I had a set of mallets that had his name on it.
The marketing worked.
The marketing worked. I asked my teacher one day, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, Michael Burritt. He teaches there." Okay, I'll check it out. And I clicked with him and first of all, his energy. I don't know if I'm sure almost anyone who would be listening to this would know of his legendary energy.
Sure.
And absolute dedication to percussion overall. I had thought he was a marimbist, and I think that's a big misconception when it comes to him. He is an incredible overall percussionist.
Sure.
I think marimba is how he maybe made his name, but the whole focus there was on percussion ensemble. That was the focus, and that was awesome.
Yeah. So that was your undergrad. Did you spend a lot of time in Chicago then? Like, you lived there for 4 years or more. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yep.
And from there, you kind of, obviously you already know you want to, or I assume you want to have a career in the music industry, was as a performer and percussionist. That's where you were kind of honing some of those thoughts and ideas, or no?
Sort of. I had a double degree in music ed, music performance,
Okay.
and I didn't actually want to be a performer. I was more interested in education, and this will come full circle later. But
Yep.
partly
I
what
see it
I
coming.
wanted,
I can feel it.
you can see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there.
Right.
But what I wanted to do above anything else was I wanted to study abroad.
Sure.
That was a dream of mine since I was a little kid. I wanted to see more of the world, and performance was my ticket to do that. And I had gotten into my late senior year of undergrad, and that's when you're more able to explore things on your own.
Yeah.
And develop these interests, and then you go to a graduate school to sort of hone your specific interests. And I got really into theatrical percussion with voice or movement or other disciplinary artistic disciplines.
Right.
And one day I was in Chicago. This was right. I hadn't applied anywhere, and so the year was coming to an end, and I had no plans. I had a couple thoughts about going overseas, but then Professor Burritt called, and he's like, "Hey, Cory, I'm at a Chicago Bulls game," and this is a true story. He was at a Bulls game, and I don't know why he's calling me from a Bulls game.
Right.
But he's like, "Anders wants to talk to you," and it was Anders Ostrand. I don't know if you guys know Anders.
Yeah.
Brilliant Swedish percussionist, vibraphonist, and so he passes him the phone, and then Anders comes on, and Anders and Bert are very good friends. So I had known Anders as a guest artist for many years, and he said, "Cory, you need to go to Australia and study with Vanessa Tomlinson." I'm like,
oh,
what?
Great.
What? He had just judged a competition with her in I think it was Geneva, and she performed and judged, and he saw the connection and told Burritt and then told me, and so I emailed her, and it was pretty crazy because I had to send a VHS tape and get it switched to the correct Australia format. Yeah, that's how old I am, folks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for you listeners at home, VHS.
Ain't no YouTube. I had to go to this part of Chicago where the shops, it was called Devon Street, which is like all the ethnic restaurants and shops, and this guy would convert your VHS to whatever region.
Wow.
And the next thing I know, I'm in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah,
my master's.
I was going to ask if you studied with Vanessa. I've just had an opportunity to meet her once at PASIC, but she was super cool. I had a chance to have a conversation with her, and we've kept in touch a little bit, but yeah, I was curious if that's who you studied with in Australia then.
She is absolutely phenomenal. She studied with Steve Schick, so she's from that UCSD percussion contingent, like Morris Palter, Terry Longshore, Ayun Wang. I think some of them are Black Swamp artists, if I'm not mistaken.
Morris.
And what I say about my time in Australia and my time at Northwestern is that, like, Professor Burritt taught me to be a percussionist, and Vanessa taught me how to be an artist. Yeah, and I walked away from there understanding better about percussion as an artistic medium, and that was very cool.
Yeah. It totally makes sense, kind of backtracking to what you were saying before, is like you're kind of honing your skills in a master's program, and I went to the University of Akron for master's work, and it was really the same thing. I mean, in undergrad, you're learning how to play, how to hold the sticks. Hopefully you know how to hold the sticks by the time you get to college, but learning more fundamentals and basics and playing in ensembles, and you get to your master's program, and that's you're learning how to express yourself. Dr. Snyder there worked a lot with me on totally performance, how to be an artist, how to kind of put together a program, or assemble pieces,
bring things to that next level, and really get your voice out, which is something I talk to young students about all the time. How to find your voice. So I left Australia, and then I actually lived in Italy for a year. I had a research fellowship to a contemporary arts think tank
Yeah.
Whatever the heck that means. It was crazy. There were 40 of us under the age of 24 from, I think it was 35 different countries. And it was run by United Colors of Benetton, the clothing corporation.
Right.
Who are famous for very controversial ad campaigns and sort of a global artistic view through their business. And so this think tank was at their headquarters, and all we did was create all day long. And there are people there from all different artistic disciplines. It was incredibly crazy, especially as a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
To be in Italy, to be funded, and to be with all these other young artists. You can imagine that it was a fun time.
Okay, so is this the time period that you didn't want to talk about then? Is this the area we need to gloss over a little bit?
Well, there is just one thing about my friend who's a graffiti artist, and the two of us being chased by the Italian police in Venice. That's the end of the story. We didn't get caught. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, well,
but there's a story before that. It was fun. It was fun, but it also led to the creation of percussive storytelling directly. I mean, I think everything led to that creation, but there was that tipping point, and that happened when I was in Italy.
So before we dive into that, I do want to go back, and you said in your undergrad the last couple of years you were getting interested in kind of that type of performance art, if that's the way you put it, more.
Yeah, just interdisciplinary percussion with other things,
right?
Especially voice.
How did that transpire then, even in undergrad? Was there something?
I absolutely have no clue.
Just became an interest.
I'm guessing I saw someone else perform something at a recital, and I liked it. I really don't know. I can't speak to any specific piece or moment. I mean, the first piece I did was To the Earth by Frederick Jevsky, the clay pots piece.
All right.
That was the first one with voice that I ever did, but there was stuff before that led me to really like those pieces. And I know later, I know why I like those pieces. At the time, I had no clue at all.
So what is it that you found you liked about them?
For me, it's the audience engagement. So I find that interdisciplinary projects or performances that utilize all these different artistic angles have a better chance of resonating with audience members.
Sure.
And of course, there are other things that go into it, but that's something that I like about interdisciplinary arts. You just have so much more possibility, and you're not stuck in playing only X or only Y. Right. It's kind of a limitless area.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a good point. Sort of, not only the creativity and the possibility, but also engaging the audience or making it a little more accessible, I guess.
And that's exactly the perfect segue to percussive storytelling. Hi, my name is Cory, and I work in a drum factory. I have a wife, 2 kids, and a dog. One day my boss said to me, she said, "Cory?" I said, "Yeah." "Are you busy?" I said, "Nah." She said, "So hit the blocks with your right hand." Hi, my name is Cory, and I work in a drum factory. I have a wife, 2 kids, and a dog. One day my boss said to me, she said, "Cory?" I said, "Yeah." When I was in Italy doing this art, it was definitely a brand of art called art for art's sake. And that's where you do the art and you simply expect, because it's high art, that people get it or should appreciate it. Right. Now, we could easily have a debate about that, and some people listening might really want to have a philosophical debate, and that's fine, because I clearly stand on one side there.
Yeah.
But basically, when that was happening, I grew disenchanted because I was preparing all this time and all this energy for these performances that only a few people would show up for.
Yeah.
And clearly at the time I was pissed, and I was thinking that it was the audience's fault, and I later realized that it was completely my fault. I was not engaging correctly or finding the right community to present my work. And so what I did one day is I wrote a story while I was improvising on some... Oh, this is really funny. I'm not making this up, but they were a couple of Black Swamp wood blocks.
Oh, yeah?
So there's a plug, but it's a genuine plug.
Oh, thanks.
And some cowbells. No worries. I got to throw that in there.
Right.
And it sounded like a bicycle, and so I sat down and I wrote a story called The Lost Bicycle, and it's about a kid who loses his bike and then finds it. So it's not exactly a complicated story.
Right.
But what I did is I set it to percussion music, and I told the story orally while I played the percussion music. And I played it for a couple people there, and the response was overwhelming that was just super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I recorded a little bit, and this was still before any YouTube thing, but I just did it for myself, and I kind of kept it in my back pocket and more or less forgot about it.
Sure.
Until I came back to the States, and I played it and talked to someone who's been a big mentor for me over the years is Matthew Duvall from 8th Blackbird.
Oh, okay. Yep. Also Black Swamp guy.
Yep. I've known him. They were at Northwestern, and they were in residence when I was there.
Okay.
And he, to this day, has been a huge influence and supporter. In fact, he and his wife funded the very first public performance of percussive storytelling at their daughter's school.
Awesome.
Way back to about 10 years ago. And I had played a story for him, and then I had to put more stories together because I didn't have a program, but I got booked for a program, so I just had to compose and write more.
All right.
And then things just sort of blew up. When I was in Kansas doing my doctoral studies, I received a grant through a benefactor for a large sum of money to essentially offer the storytelling project to schools and libraries throughout the state of Kansas for free. Yeah. He would pay me externally, and that way it was part of an outreach program he had created. He is a lawyer who was also a benefactor of the arts. And in one summer, 3 months, I did about 120 performances.
Holy cow. Yeah. That's awesome. So how did this benefactor even know this was a project you were working on? Like, how did you guys get connected?
Because this is an awesome story. I played a church gig.
Hallelujah.
The old-fashioned church gig.
Yeah.
So someone at the University of Kansas, where I was doing my doctoral work, had heard that I did. So at this time, I had done like maybe 6 to 10 performances ever. Mm-hmm. Just very scattered things. But it was something I was really interested in, and I had a fellowship during my doctorate, so I basically just had free reign to do whatever. And I was trying to develop things a little more, and this person heard about me, and this church she sang at, she was a singer, had a family service, and she thought one of my stories would be perfect. And I didn't want to go because I had to drive up to Chicago that day for a concert, and it's like a 10-hour drive. So, but, being young and completely poor, you take church gigs because they pay. And I did that, and then I went to Chicago, and I got an email later that day from this strange person, and it said, "We need to talk," and it was signed this lawyer.
Huh.
And I'm thinking...
Some copyright infringement?
What did I do? So I ended up contacting him, and he was at the church and had this program he was thinking about starting, or he had started it or developed,
Right.
And he called me up and he's like, I'm going to fund you to do this. So go do it.
Well, there's definitely a lesson to be learned there, kids. All you kids listening out there, take the gigs.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who you're gonna meet, and you don't know what's gonna come from it.
Well, what's interesting about that is what happened through that. Yeah, it's true, taking the gigs, but if you sort of as you hear my biography, you can tell that the thread's already there, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
It's just a matter of maximizing the opportunity when it comes.
One day, long, long ago, Mother Earth's only son was celebrating his 6th birthday. And Mother Earth wanted to give him the greatest gift in the entire land. After talking to Father Ocean, Brother Sky, and Sister Moon, Mother Earth created the first bicycle. The boy was overjoyed. This is the best gift ever. I will always keep it with me. And for the first month, he did just that. The boy rode the bicycle everywhere, in the green forest, down the steep mountain, and through the rushing river. But one day, a giant thunderstorm came down from the sky. The boy was forced to seek shelter, and he left his bike out in the rain next to the great tree.
And there's a great book by this sort of he's more of a social psychologist writer named Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
And he's written a lot of books, one called Outliers, one called The Tipping Point. And The Tipping Point is what happened to me that summer. And it's basically when you have so much stuff that your craft truly goes from point A to point Z. And you have no choice but to do it. And
right.
There's a famous story about how the Beatles, when they started, were not a great band. They were okay, but they had then they got a standing gig at this, I think it was in Germany, for like 8 days a week to perform sets every day, 8 days a week. And they did that for over a year, okay?
What, 8 days a week?
And yep.
Oh.
And after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows, how do you think they sounded? Pretty amazing. And that's basically what happened to me. And a lot of people who develop programs go through a sort of tipping point. And doing 120 performances in 3 months will certainly get you there.
Yeah.
And then I look up, and percussive storytelling is not just a small little hobby on the side. It's more or less a bigger thing. And now, to date, I'm close to 550 performances in 10 countries to over 150,000 kids.
And
which is
obviously
pretty cool.
Albums. I mean, you mentioned the first piece you wrote was called "The Lost Bicycle."
Yep.
There's an album that came out, and I know it was won like parenting awards and some other kind of creative type awards.
So Lost Bicycle and then Drum Factory are my 2 albums.
Right.
They've won over a dozen creative arts awards, and I've also released 2 books.
Yeah, like children's novels.
Children's books.
Yeah.
One for younger kids, and then one for like elementary school, middle grade readers. And I'm writing the 3rd book right now. It's the 2nd book in a series, and that comes out in June.
Yeah.
And I'll also be recording my 3rd album as well. So it's a project that keeps growing, and now I found myself in a very interesting position. And this is normally what happens after some sort of tipping point, is you come up for air and you didn't really realize what happened, and then people look at you differently and they assume you're they treat you more like an expert in a certain area.
Sure.
And I've had the benefit over the last few years to take a step back and sort of analyze percussive storytelling from a artistic angle, also an educational angle, and that goes full circle back to me being a double major in music education and performance.
Right.
See, I told you it was coming back.
Yeah, no, that's not the first time I've had a conversation with somebody that there are those circles, like either people that you meet or, like in your case, sort of a discipline that you were interested in, and then there's this huge arc that turns into a circle and kind of comes back to what you were interested in. So,
Yep.
No, it's all very cool.
Pretty cool.
I do have a couple questions, and maybe you were getting this too. First question: so when you're back in Italy, and the kind of seed of percussive storytelling has been planted and maybe growing a little bit, was it strictly a children's kind of outreach concept?
Yes.
Or okay, well, that answered the question. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, it was actually specifically the mission statement was to bring classical music and storytelling to children in underserved communities. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did for a number of years. And then fortunately or unfortunately, it depends how you look at it, it became more of a for-profit. And then for a number of years, I was operating on this who can pay me sort of model, which, I mean, come on, let's be honest. You have to.
Well, it's your
you
career.
Have to charge.
Yeah.
It's my career, yeah. And then in the last year and a half to 2 years, I've come back because I hit 500 performances. I look back and I was thinking about, I hustled so hard to get to this point, but I got to this point. So what do I really want to do with the program? Mm-hmm. And the simple answer is to go back to the root mission statement, which is to bring this to children in underserved communities. Yeah. And I've partnered with a number of organizations this year that are nonprofits that have all of that infrastructure in place. Mm-hmm. And I come in as a external consultant, liaison, whatever, and get to go to these schools and communities that are really struggling. In Los Angeles, this next year, I might be going to a few dozen places. And in the winter spring of 2020, I'm an artist in residence in Colorado through a grant through the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, to go into a struggling town, or a failing town is what they call it. That's where the town is literally failing in every aspect. And it's a concept many people are not familiar with, but a town can actually go under, like a whole town. Yeah. It's weird. But normally, I should say historically, what happens in these times of strife is that the arts are turned to as a means of help. Yeah. People normally create and use art in difficult times. And I've turned back to that mission statement, and it's pretty awesome because that's what I originally wanted to do. And now the program is, the infrastructure is set so that I can do that and not have to worry about the funding aspect as I was before. And that just is really awesome. Yeah, congratulations. I mean, it's a huge, opportunity for you, and then, like you're saying, for communities that are struggling or failing, like to have that kind of connection and creativity, and to help, hopefully, kind of rebuild, their systems and their life. I think is really commendable. And the fact that you had a dream to travel the world when you were a kid, and we got to go to Australia and Italy, and then all of this was taking shape around the same time. Like, congratulations. One other question I had about this before we do move on to Los Angeles is your website, splatboombang.com. Like, that is the home for percussive storytelling. Like, what's the connection there? Like,
is that literally just sort of a brand name, or is there another?
It is. It's kind of a brand name. It came to me in form of like onomatopoeia in the old Batman, the original Batman series. You remember when he would hit someone, it would be like kapow,
Yeah,
or
right.
bam.
Right.
And so I kind of thought that what I do is kind of onomatopoetic. There's a whole lot of connection between the language and the percussion. So I just came up with splat boom bang.
Yeah.
And
no,
there you go.
I always
Corporate branding.
No, I found it interesting, and then was always curious if there was another element to it, or it was literally kind of a branding thing. So I mean, it's smart. Which, by the way, I did try to watch that original Batman movie with my two girls several months ago. Yeah, they were not impressed. We did watch the Michael Keaton Batman from the 80s.
Oh, good. That's a good one.
Yep, they did enjoy that. So I redeemed myself.
Just don't do just no Ben Affleck or George Clooney.
No,
just stay away from that
we'll
stuff.
leave the bat nipples at home, but
yeah.
So
it's cold, okay? It's cold.
But Batman's human too. So we tried to watch the original, and it was like too corny. They just kind of looked at me like, "What do you see in this?" I'm like, "I don't know. It was fun when I was a kid. I kind of liked it, but so." Okay, so somehow you make your way then from Kansas, which seems to be your home base at that time, to Los Angeles, which I think is like a whole nother, what I consider a kind of chapter in your percussive career, I guess. Like, how did that transpire?
You could say that. My wife she's a biologist, and she had received a postdoctoral position in Los Angeles at a university.
Okay.
And so we came out here because we thought, well, it's Los Angeles, there might be something for me. And within about a couple of weeks, I had a couple gigs. And I mean, I'm not saying like the most amazing gigs. In fact, they were very strange gigs, but they were gigs. And the weather is kind of cool. If you don't know, the weather's pretty awesome.
Right.
And we just decided that it was pretty neat. She liked it, I liked it, and she ended up leaving academia for industry.
Okay.
Because science actually has an industry,
right,
unlike us. Well, that they pay you for.
Right.
And so we kind of started to set up a little more of a home base out here.
Oh, okay. And I mean, how soon? I mean, you start taking gigs, like you said. I mean, how long did it take you to hook up with the quartet, the Los Angeles Percussion Quartet? Those guys.
Yeah, not very long, and it was not. So when I moved out here, one of the first things I did was just send a message to all of the percussion professors at various universities and orchestral players, simply saying hi.
Right.
And with a brief bio. Not begging for gigs, but just simply saying hi. And I went to see a percussion ensemble concert that Nick Terry, who a member of the quartet, was presenting at Chapman University, where he's a professor.
Mm-hmm.
And I met Justin DeHart there. He's another member of the quartet. And this was just in passing, like I was new to the city. And then they sent out a call or an invitation for auditions. They sent this out everywhere. But they contacted me for an immediate 2 gigs they had in the following 2 weeks. So essentially they needed a fourth.
Right.
But they also needed someone really quick to come in. And so I became the really quick person, and then they just didn't get rid of me somehow.
Or you wouldn't leave.
I wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
That served as my audition, and we clicked on a lot of levels. Personal and professional, which it's really cool when you like the people you work with, you know.
Yeah, as far as Black Swamp is concerned, like, we have an awesome, like, team here. We're all friends. We all click, and it definitely makes working together easier. And then I can only imagine, I mean, who wants to play music with somebody that just gets on your nerves or rubs you the wrong way?
It's
obviously.
true, but I mean, you'd be surprised. People, especially younger groups and younger players, don't put as much stock in the personal side of things.
Yeah.
But as you get older, and at this point, you have to keep in mind, I have 2 small children. Nick has 2 small children. Matt has 1. We have kids. We're old. We're not a young 20 ensemble in our 20s ensemble, and so we put a lot more stock into the personal relationship side of things. Something I wish younger ensembles and younger players did more, honestly.
Right.
Because that comes back around. People develop reputations, and it's hard to shake these things. And of course, we're all egocentric in our early 20s and think that everything revolves around us. Like, we're all guilty of that to some degree. But I would love to see these young ensembles put more stock in those interpersonal relationships. Because I've been kind of shocked at some of the things I've seen from different groups.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's definitely a big part of it. I mean, even as an individual, like when you're saying you roll into Los Angeles, and what I thought was pretty cool is one of the first things you did was kind of introduce yourself, even by email or letter, letting genuinely like kind of making yourself known in the area, and who wants to kind of work with a jerk like and you can build a reputation.
It's so true. It's so true. And the thing that I found, and now I have a little bit more perspective in that I've been working in the industry out here, and I've been doing a little more film work, a lot of live performance work,
right?
Like shows with bands. I just finished playing with The Who and Oingo Boingo. Oh yeah, Oingo Boingo. That's right. And I've been doing a lot more of that stuff, the video game industry.
Right.
And so as I get more involved in that, I've seen and heard firsthand from the contractors and the people who do the hiring that they just prefer to hire people they like as people too, because the players are here.
Yeah.
Everybody's a good player.
Yep.
I mean, come on, like we're all really good players, but at the end of the day, sometimes it just comes down to how you interact with each other.
Oh yeah, I totally believe it. Like, I do see, online you're playing with MB Gordy a lot. Which
MB. I'm playing with him Sunday.
Yeah.
Just in a few days.
Which, he's a Black Swamp artist. I've been able to meet him a couple times and talk to him. Super cool guy. He's been
awesome.
As far as I can tell, like in that movie scene, like movie music, TV show recording, live stuff like you were talking about. I do have to gush a little bit. I know he played on the latest Battlestar Galactica soundtrack. I think Bear McCreary, is that his name? The composer. Yeah. And I think that does kind of come down to relationship too. Like, he was able to establish a relationship and with a composer like that, and then be able to play on a lot of his soundtracks. And I just thought the show was awesome, and obviously the percussion and like the drumming on that was like super cool. So when I found out he was doing that, I was like, "Oh, you're awesome!" So,
oh yeah, he's great. He's helped me out so much out here.
Yeah, and that was going to be kind of one of my questions is how. I mean, mostly it's a natural progression, like you're saying. You pick up a couple gigs, and you're playing. You start with LAPQ, and is that how you say it? Is that you guys refer to yourself as LAPQ? Yeah. Okay, cool. And then you're kind of growing and building. Like, did it seem to? Was there something that kind of led you to playing these higher, kind of more profile gigs, or is it literally everything we're laying out here, like your personality, working with people, working hard, and being active and involved?
Yes, and yes to everything. Now, the thing that helped me the most So I didn't come out here in my early 20s. I came out here in my early 30s. So I was a little older anyway, which helps. That's one thing that helps.
Sure.
Joining LAPQ because they had already established themselves out here. So just by joining them, I was elevated to a different level in the percussion world out here.
Yeah.
And that helped me because I was new and people were like, who's this guy? Right?
Yeah.
And it kind of helped me jump a few of those ladder climbing steps, so that I was immediately playing with the quartet and doing some really cool, high-profile things with them, and then meeting all of these people face to face and hanging with them, and then that certainly helps because they attach a face to a name, and then you're in the back of their brain if they ever need extra percussion or whatnot. Sure. The thing is, though, like, everybody knows you want a gig. That, like, you don't need to ask. Like, everybody wants to work out here. It's so funny when you get people who, like, are basically begging for gigs. Like, we all know we all want the gigs. Like, that's sort of how it works. That's the industry.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of cool to just hang with people, you know. We're we're just percussionists. Right. So that's what I was allowed to do because of being in the quartet.
Yeah.
I didn't have to force a round peg in a square hole. I just got to let things progress a little more naturally and meet people. And as you meet people, then all of a sudden they'll call you for one thing, and if that goes well, then someone from that calls you for something else. And things have really picked up, and it's quite fun. The diversity of play is what I absolutely love the most. So in the morning I'll do a storytelling. I might have a rehearsal in the afternoon for some new music project, and then I might have a show at night. Yeah. And that is, to me personally, is what I want. It's what I want to do.
And you have 2 kids and a wife on top of it.
Yes, I do.
So, I mean, I know your kids are both in school now, right? Because you were also, within all this part-time or full-time dad.
I was a stay-at-home dad for 9 years. And made for some very early mornings and late nights, but yeah.
And I know I kind of chuckle at it, but like now that they're in school, like that does free up a lot of time for you. So does that mean you take on more, or does that mean you just can breathe between projects?
That's a great question. And my son just started kindergarten in September, so I'm still figuring that out somewhat. But a lot of this coincides with what I mentioned earlier about going back to the root mission of percussive storytelling to get to underserved communities. So I think this extra time I'm using to try to take all of the stuff I've done over the last 10 years, not just in storytelling, but elsewhere as well, and sort of organize it, analyze and organize and see really where I want to put my efforts into developing things further. Because percussive storytelling can go in so many directions, but where do I want it to go? And it's big enough and stable enough that it can go in those directions. I just need to problem solve things and make it happen. And the same is true of the quartet. Where do we want to go artistically? Where do we want to put our time? And then the freelance world is more like, if they call you, you go.
Right. There's no deciding. So basically, this is kind of giving you more time.
More time to think, develop, pursue,
troubleshoot.
Problem
solve.
All the time.
So what do you, or where do you find kind of motivation or inspiration, whether inside the music industry or outside? Because obviously, you got a lot going on. Like, what kind of keeps you moving forward?
Um, if it's a question about, are you asking about like inspiration for creation of art?
Yeah, motivation and inspiration for what you do.
So I have a really lame answer for that. It's not like a picturesque landscape or uh, a dolphin
Right.
perfectly jumping out of the water. Honestly, it's just time. If I
Yeah.
can have anything longer than 2 hours is considered like a dream scenario.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of residencies, like arts residencies, and where you go away for 2 weeks in a cabin somewhere
Yeah.
and create stuff. And people are always asking me like, "Oh, it was the nature that did it." I'm like, "No, it was the uninterrupted time."
Right.
That's what it was.
Right.
Just to be able to access those parts of your brain and just let things flow and just let it keep flowing.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a big factor.
Do you meditate then?
Do I meditate?
I mean, is that what you're getting at? Like, if you have a couple hours, you spend time just being still and being silent and letting your brain decompress a bit?
Yeah, but it's sort of an active meditation because I do things like I write a lot. I
Oh, okay.
write all the time,
Sure.
and I kind
Like
of
journaling?
meditate. So I'll like what?
Journaling or music?
Sure, yeah, not music. Stories.
Right.
And so I just write text and even write about pieces I would compose or do it, but I don't write the music. And I just kind of let my brain go, and then I come back later and analyze things or look through it, and most of it's complete garbage. But
Hey.
some really cool things happen from that, and
Yeah.
I mean, I have a few stories where because I do a lot of improvisation on tabletop percussion, and I came up with this like great thing, and I had this story and I had the music, and they just didn't go together. So I went back into my pile of stories, and another story fit that music perfectly. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And I just like drag, click, and drop or something, and I had a new story that was ready to go. But a lot of that stuff comes from just having the time to explore.
Yeah.
And
So
that's why I go back to undergrad and graduate when I talk to younger students about them getting a little bit outside of the practice room, to stop thinking so much about technique, to stop focusing so much on these technical etudes, because if you get bogged down in that, then you are missing the artistic side of things. And then when you're outside and you're finally in the real world outside of a university setting, it's sink or swim. And the people who swim are the ones who have thought outside the box and more creatively about their art, in my opinion.
yeah. No, I mean,
And I'm just
obviously
one
you have
person.
to have a technical base, but to get, I don't know, you have to experience life, to be able to kind of infuse life into your playing, into your
and
art.
I'm not afraid to say this, but I think that the percussion world, and by percussion world I mean the university percussion teaching system, has become very technique focused.
Sure.
So much so that it's actually altering the repertoire. And to me, that's a little alarming. I think technique is great, but at some point you have to let go of it and then go, create the art.
Sure.
And I feel that in percussion right now, in Western classical percussion, I should say, we are obsessed with technique, and it's halting the development, not haunting, halting, like,
right.
or not halting, but like delaying, or I don't know.
Right.
It's my personal thought that I think we need to focus more on the art and less on the technique.
No, I think it's a really good point. I mean, would you find though that having, I mean, kind of developing that technique gives you sometimes more of a means to express your art? Like if there's something that, I mean, I guess this is getting a little too specific, that you wanted to play, or something you wanted to write, but you really couldn't because you couldn't actually play it or write it. Like,
yes. Okay. So that's a really good point. I think what I mean is we learn the technique, but then we're continually relearning it and learning it. And the pieces people are playing on their master's recitals and even doctoral recitals are actually technical etudes.
Yeah.
They're not like serious rep pieces. And so we're pushing further in that direction of technique rep instead of artistic rep. I firmly believe in the technique, and I have solid technique, and I was taught by a guy who has impeccable technique. So I definitely understand the need for the technique, and like you said, it gives me the tools. So when I get challenged with something and I have to problem solve it, I go into my technique handbook to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I let go of technique years ago as far as developing it. Like, it's not the end all.
Right.
It's a tool to help you express yourself. That's how I look at it.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. So what do you what are you doing that might help benefit your costs, I guess? You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously you're writing pieces that are more of a musical expression, or more of a piece of music, and less a technique showcase. Like, are there other
and
efforts?
then commissioning. I'm a firm believer in commissioning non-percussionists for music.
Yep, that's kind of what I was thinking is you almost have to reach out to non-percussionists to help kind of develop this repertoire.
Yep. Yeah, and the way that I talk about that, and even the quartet, we give classes or lectures, or if I give a talk, and I'm not affiliated with the university, which is really cool because I can just kind of say what I want. I don't piss off anybody. It's great.
Right.
But I guess when you go back to like John Cage, Lou Harrison, these early writers, they would go for a sound concept and then have to go out and figure it out.
Sure.
And the technique was developed around the composer's mind. And then what I think is happening now is composers see all of the only technique that we show them. And then they're composing to our technique, not to their minds.
Yeah, not to their vision.
And that's because when they go to our recitals or whatever, when they're in undergrad, grad, we're not playing rep pieces, we're playing technical pieces. And so then they think that that's how you're supposed to play the instruments.
Right.
And I want to go back to a time when the composer comes to me and says, I want something like this, and it doesn't exist. And you have to go and you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's so much fun where like I have to hold weird mallet formations and like there's no technique for it, but you have to figure it out.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. It's all about the sound. That's what we do for a living, is we create sound. And
so that's something that you talk to, if you are doing a school visit or a residency, you talk to kids about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm being a lot more PC on this conversation than I am when
I appreciate
talking
that.
to kids.
Yeah, we don't want to alienate too many people here.
That's true. But it's a debate I want to have, because I feel like these conversations they all come from a good place. Even people who are high on the technique side, they're developing things that are crazy awesome.
Right.
But I think that these debates can help push things forward, because to me, at the end of the day, no matter what side you're on, we still want percussion to continue to develop as a Western classical instrument. And we need to keep pushing that development. And so that's the goal at the end of the day.
What if you could go back in time 25 years and talk to young Cory Hills,
Oh, God.
maybe at Northwestern, and maybe this is all kind of tied together with what we were just talking about. Like, what would you tell yourself? One or two things that you kind of know now that you wish you would have known then. Don't take the blue pill, or is it the red pill?
Don't say. Yeah, right. Go to law school? I don't know. Is that
Yeah, right. Yeah. Play the flute.
No, I play the flute. Oh God, there you go. Something that I definitely would have talked about, and this is something that is offered a lot more today than it was when I was in college, was music business skills.
Sure.
Or just business skills, as far as grant writing, just understanding and working through the professional side of things, professional development.
Right.
Now they have courses in like entrepreneurship and all this stuff. That didn't exist. We had to learn it basically day by day. You did a gig, and then you would write down what worked and what didn't. You know,
Right.
And you would go from there. So I would definitely tell myself and other people that age to think further down the road, because the university system is a bit of a not a trap. It's an Eden. It's a paradise, and that's not what actual real life is. I mean, when you go to a school, you have every instrument there. You know,
right.
Everything's laid out for you.
Yeah.
You have gigs, you have support, and you're not in charge of any of it. You just get to show up and do it. It's paradise. But the real world does not work that way. And so I would talk to myself about some career kind of things.
No, I totally agree. I mean, when I was in school, undergrad and graduate school, all I wanted to do was play. Like, I mean, unfortunately, some other subjects suffered because I was like, all I wanted to do was, practice. And well, I couldn't say all I wanted to do was practice, but all I wanted to do was play music. And now, what do? I'm involved in a percussion manufacturing company doing sales and marketing and artist relations. Like, so, going back in time, I would have definitely taken, hindsight's always 2020. I would have definitely taken business classes, marketing classes, and it's never too late. But
right.
When you are in school and you have the opportunity, because I think you're totally right. I mean, you still have to, as a percussionist, you have to market yourself. You have to be professional. You have to know kind of what you're doing outside of just playing the music. So, I think it's a great point.
Yeah, developing a secondary skill is another way of sort of phrasing that, which is writing. I mean, that's something that a lot of people should be working on. But I have found, and I know I write creative stories, but I'm not talking about that kind of writing. I have found that my ability as a writer has opened so many doors for me.
Sure. So do you see a possible secondary career path you already have one children's story sequel coming out. Like, is that another direction you want to go?
You mean the more technical side?
Or just not necessarily playing less, but writing stories more, like writing children's books more, and become.
Yeah, that certainly does interest me, but even separate from that is just your ability to write letters of interest, job application things, a biography, a curriculum vitae.
Sure.
There, all that kind of writing, and then just general email etiquette, which is unstinking believable today. Things like that I feel are overlooked, but other secondary skills could be music recording, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Understanding the audio side of things or the video side of things. And I just have seen that people, percussionists, other musicians too, who have a secondary skill, just have a more successful freelance life or career life because, well, it seems obvious, but
it's more versatile.
You have to develop those skills earlier on. Or you don't have to. Of course, it's never too late. But while you're an undergrad, that's a great time, man.
Yep, you have all the resources.
Yeah, you have full... I mean, if you wanted to get involved in audio recording, I mean, every school has incredible access to that. And then you graduate and you have, like, your old MacBook and, like, one SM57. Like, great, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
So I just feel that stuff is really important. I want all these young percussionists, and I would have wanted myself as well, to look at things a little more on a macro scale instead of I'm just going for the gig.
Right. So what do you do outside of playing music and writing music? Any other...
I build Legos. I do a lot of Legos.
Do you? Like with your kids or with just
with my kids?
Yeah.
I do a lot of Legos and a lot of pretend play.
Yeah.
Where I have to dress up in, well, whatever they make me dress up
Oh,
as.
okay. So you do that with your kids too. It's not pretend play.
It's not just you. Don't worry.
When you have your 2 hours of free time, you play pretend. Yeah, the Legos are sweet. I got 2 girls, and we don't do a ton, but Christmas or birthday, sometimes they'll get a set, and then I bought myself some. We don't go crazy, but we enjoy it. Do you like kind of build and tear apart and rebuild things, or you stick to the instructions and then it sits in your
I am
curio
not
cabinet?
an instruction person. I don't know if you could even tell that from this conversation.
Well,
but
there's different
there may have
sides.
been some hints that I definitely don't follow the instruction manual.
So you just have a sea of
true.
You have a sea of Legos, and you just kind of start to build and create then.
It looks a heck of a lot like my percussion studio, actually. It's more or less the same thing, just larger objects. No, that's I play with my kids, and then I write. I just love writing, and sometimes the writing is related to my work, and other times it's not. I just like to write. Cool.
Well, I appreciate, again, the phone call. Like, getting your story was a lot of fun. I mean, like most of the people I've been talking to, I know who you are. I know you know what you do, some more elementary things.
Right.
But so to be able to kind of dig into what you're doing, what you've been doing for the last years, it's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week at PASIC. For those listening at home, I'm not sure when this will get released, but we got PASIC next week in Indianapolis, so we'll run into each other there, I think. I hope so. So
I'm gonna enter a 4-mallet chop competition. Do you think?
I think it might be too late. You might have to register for 2020, or you could just walk on. You could just make an appearance. But
I feel like I want to go. They have this what is it, the nighttime marimba hang thing. Have you heard about this?
No, I don't know. Usually,
it's like at the bar in the West End, there's a marimba, and then people play some things, and then you can just go up and play.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that I would go up there and essentially just improvise a solo in the style of all of the famous Four Mallet people. And yeah, just sort of piece it all together into some meta piece, and see if anyone gets the joke. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure they would, but I mean, how many styles would there be? I mean, I guess you have to you got to go in with some sort of outline, right?
Let's just say I may have been thinking about this for years already. This is not a new thing.
It wouldn't be an improvisation. It's actually composed.
Yeah, but by this point, it's a set composition.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Cory.
Hey, thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you again soon.